Yeah, so excited to talk about the art of navigating friendships in adulthood today. And so I'm happy to jump in. And so just yeah, a bit of an intro as well. My name is Natasha and I work with individuals and couples. I currently work at Bloom Psychology. And so I specialize mostly in relationship concerns, anxiety, as well as life transitions. And so today, I know just before getting into this topic, I want to just start by getting comfortable in our seats, and maybe we can start by doing more so a belly breathing activity. So if you want to get comfortable, feel free if you want to close your eyes or gaze to the floor, whatever feels most comfortable for you. As well as if it's accessible to you, you can place one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and we'll start by taking a deep breath in. As we're taking a deep breath in, we're going to extend our bellies forward and exhale. And again, inhale, belly goes in and exhale. And then again, inhale, belly's out, and exhale, belly comes in. And again, inhale, belly is going out, and exhale, belly comes in. Whenever you're ready, bring yourself back to the room, opening your eyes. And yeah, that's belly breathing, one of my favorite grounding techniques, as a great way to just kind of get grounded in our space and yeah, really just allow yourself to be present. And so, yeah, just one moment, just adjusting something here. Um, yeah, so let's move towards um, our icebreaker. So we're using a just checking in question. And so this one is from the card game, Just Checking In. And so the question is, what is one love language that you would like to receive more often? This can be words of affirmation, spending quality time, gifts, acts of service, or physical touch. So feel free if you want to share that in the chat, or you can unmute your mic and share. Um, yeah, what's one love language you'd like to receive more of? Acts of service. Yes, I hear you. Acts of service. Um, yeah, for me, I would say quality time. Acts of service and quality time, I'm realizing, are my top love languages. I know they can shift from time to time, but yeah, quality time is one that's standing out to me. And same for Jashana. Okay, yeah, top two.
I think for me right now,
Mhm.
because I'm fortunate enough to have someone who provides the other love languages for me, I think I would like gifts. Not because I like
Mm,
gifts, but because I personally love giving other people gifts, and I
mm,
love the intention that goes behind finding something specific that I know that they would like, or that I've
mhm.
paid attention and like kept note of.
Yes.
It would be cool to see what people think about to give to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's true. And that's a gift is so much about like the thought behind it, and like you said, like what is being paid attention to. Um, so yeah, and I agree with Kim. Gifts matter too. They definitely are a way to reflect love. So yeah, going moving towards just our our topic for today.
Just wanted to quickly mention that we have someone who just joined in. Estefani,
Okay.
welcome.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
It's okay, no
No
worries.
worries.
We just
Welcome.
did an icebreaker.
Yeah, so now moving towards just kind of what we're going to be discussing in terms of the art of navigating friendships in adulthood. So we'll start off by discussing just the importance of friendships. What are some common myths that may come up in friendships? We're going to discuss some tips for developing friendships, the role of values in developing friendships, as well as actionable steps to create and nourish certain friendships. And lastly, we'll have a resource section and any question or answers. And so, yeah, let's talk about the importance of friendship. This is something that comes up a lot in therapy as well with clients that, friendships there can be different life stages. As adults, we may have less time for friendships. But I really want to start off by highlighting just the importance of friendship for our well-being and for connection. And so research has shown that friendships and connection makes us happier, makes us healthier. We are relational beings and we are created for connection. So there is no shame in really saying, you know what, I really want to expand in this area and develop more of my friendships. And I love this quote by Dr. Sue Johnson. She says, "To be human is to need others, and there is no flaw or weakness in that." So, yeah, as we discuss friendships, I hope that this is a takeaway that it's okay to say, this is something that's important to me right now. And so as we're talking about friendships, I want to really get into what does a healthy friendship consist of? And so the first one is consistency. Consistency can look like really being a reliable person. If you cannot spend time with someone, giving them the heads up, like, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it. But consistency can look like consistency in our behaviors and how we show up for the person. And that is something that really builds trust in relationships. The next one is vulnerability. So true, authentic connection truly comes from being vulnerable in relationships and allowing yourself to be honest with the person that's in front of you. And so, being vulnerable can be sharing parts of yourself, sharing experiences, sharing your opinions, even asking someone to hang out. That is vulnerable. The next one is emotional safety. So having a healthy friendship, there needs to be a level of emotional safety. So this means really knowing that you're going to be met with openness. You're not going to be met with judgment when you share or express yourself, is a key component to feeling emotionally safe in the relationship. The next one is healthy friends are supportive. So you're going to be met with encouragement. You're going to support can look like different things. So it may show up as we talk about love languages, could show up as acts of service. It could show up as quality time. It's ways in which, support was needed in that time. The next one is healthy accountability. So this really means, is this friend someone who is, going to check you on things? Are they going to say, hey, I noticed you said that this is something that you are trying to do, and I noticed this action isn't really aligned with that, to really ensure that they're looking after your well-being. They're not going to let you go off and do all these things that are unhealthy or without asking you, like, hey, just checking in. So healthy friendships have healthy accountability. Again, this is not done with control. It's done with care and love. And so the last one is communication. So really being able to share and receive information from each other about your needs effectively. And so when communication is prioritized, there can be, it can be helpful to even address any misunderstandings when you have strong communication in the relationship. And so next, I want to discuss what are signs of an unhealthy friendship. So this may look like a lack of boundaries, not really having a guided expectation of what's expected in the relationship, what you can and cannot do. You feel put down in this friendship. So, whether that be through words or passive aggressive comments. Gossip is another sign of unhealthy friendship. So gossip can be something that also is a way to avoid vulnerability, deflecting from talking about yourself or opening up yourself. If there's lots of gossip and that's created the foundation of the relationship, then that can also be a sign of poor intimacy in the friendship. The next one would be you leave feeling drained or unsettled. So not really feeling uplifted by this person, feeling like you just, kind of spent time with someone who just zapped your energy. The next one is it's self-centered and it's not reciprocal. So oftentimes you meet with this person, they're talking primarily about themselves. There's no back and forth, and want to highlight that it's okay to have times where it is just about them, but knowing that this relationship is reciprocal and that you can also rely on the person. The next one is poor communication. So that can look like, passive aggressive communication, things not being discussed, not feeling like you can really truly express yourself to this person. And as a result, can further feelings of disconnection in the relationship. And so I want to just share this quote by Brene Brown, really talking about connection. And so she writes, "Connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, when they derive sustenance and strengths from the relationship." And so this just highlights, how vulnerability takes place in friendships, that to be seen, to be heard, to feel valued, that can feel vulnerable at times, to allow ourselves to rely on someone that way. So I want to highlight that, there may be some discomfort in seeking out connection initially, but truly this is what's at the core of connection, is when you feel seen and heard and valued. And so, the next step here, I want to just pause and reflect for a moment. And so I'm curious if there's any things that stand out to you in terms of what might be important to you in a friendship, or what are some friendship green flags that stand out to you. Miel says communication and trust, and definitely go hand in hand. Yes, absolutely. Communication, having strong communication is something that builds that trust. I know for me, I personally really appreciate that healthy accountability. Being with someone who's just a yes person in your life can be very unsettling, because you're not really knowing, is this person really caring for my well-being, or is there certain things that maybe this person doesn't feel comfortable to talk about. So that would be one that stands out. I've recently learned that a few of my relationships were one-sided, and communication and boundaries have become very important. Yes, thank you for sharing, Estefania. So sorry. Absolutely, boundaries in relationships that are one-sided are so important. And so I'm glad that's something that you've been learning, and I hope those have been helpful for you. Healthy communication and friendship, to meet me where I'm at. Yes, absolutely. Meeting you where you're at. I like that. That's key. I know being able to really be present and knowing that your friend is going to meet you where you're at, not try to push you to a place too far, but gently with love. That's important. Common values, yes. And we will get to that as well. So thank you for sharing that, Dashana. All right. So moving to the next one, we're going to talk about common myths in friendship. So one of the main myths that stand out is all good friendships should happen organically. And so, as much as this can be like naturally connecting with someone is great, but I wanted to highlight this as a myth that relationships and friendships require effort and maintenance. And so recognizing that maintenance is required is an important way to debunk this myth that you may not that the only way to develop a friendship is for it to occur naturally. And so, yeah, the next one is friendships should last forever. Although some friends last forever and last a lifetime, it's okay to notice that friendships also do fizzle out, and it's okay to have those ebbs and flows in certain friendships. The next one is myth is once a friendship fades, it will never come back. So really recognizing that some friendship goes through those ebbs and flows, they have different seasons, and that's okay. And it's okay to notice that, okay, I want to re-nourish that relationship or feed into that relationship and see what happens. The next myth is the end of a friendship is not as bad as the end of a romantic relationship. And this one's really important because I know sometimes we may not give friendship breakups enough room to really grieve and really acknowledge that there is its own grieving process in that. And so really recognizing that friendship breakups can be painful, they have their own grieving process, and that it's okay to also hold space for this pain. The next one is if a friendship ends, it means that I have failed. So, sometimes it can be so easy to internalize relationships ending, but I want to highlight that sometimes the end of a friendship is actually a sign of maturity, and it can be a healthy decision to make and say, you know what, this friendship, it's been great for this season, but I don't see it flourishing anywhere. That's okay. So yeah, as we move towards a pause and reflect, I want to check in, are there any of these friendship myths that stand out to you? And I'll go back to them so you could take a look. Oh, too far back. There we go. And if you want to just write 1, 2, or 3, 4, or 5, you don't need to write the whole thing out. All of the above. Nice. Good. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad we could debunk some myths together. Yes. I'm glad. And friendships are a chosen family, so friendship breakups can be super hard. Absolutely. Yes. And, I know sometimes that can also impact vulnerability. It's when we have friendship breakups, they may feel like sometimes if there's a friendship wound that occurs or a trust betrayal that occurs, that may impact us of, really feeling comfortable to open up, and it may increase that feeling of discomfort. So really validating that, creating space to leave room for the pain that can come from that is a big, important part of healing and moving forward. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And so as we talk about the myths, I want to talk about the common challenges that can come up in making friendships in adulthood. So some of the 5 key ones are the fear of being vulnerable. I know that was something that we discussed. So this can be the fear of asking someone to hang out. This can be the fear of being seen in relationships, expressing yourself in relationships. The next one is time restraints. So, having a busy schedule, not really having the time to kind of foster new friendships, as well as different life priorities and interests. So, this can be another one that we may notice different fadings in certain friendships where maybe there's different stages in life. Interests have changed. And so therefore, maybe we're not as keeping in touch with this friend. The initial meeting of people can feel like a challenge. Where do I meet people? I know after the pandemic, I know sometimes it can be easy to want to stay inside more. We get so used to that going out may be something that does not feel as comfortable as it was before. And lastly is the fear of rejection, which can be very similar to the vulnerability piece, is that if I reach out, will this person reject me? What if they don't want to meet or go out and hang out with me? So yeah, I want to pause here and check in. Do any of these challenges stand out to you, or would you add any challenges to this list? Trinice, being vulnerable and initially reaching out. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It can feel really like an emotional risk. Thank you for sharing. And Chanel, different life priorities and interests is a common theme in my friendships. A lot of my friends don't have kids yet, and I feel like it's hard to connect with them at times as a result. Absolutely. Different connection points, how those change can feel like an adjustment to the relationship for sure. Time restraints and life priorities are a big one for me. Absolutely. Yeah.
I agree with Chanel, actually,
Mm,
a lot when it comes to the different life priorities and interests. Because for like my situation, I got married pretty young. And so I stopped getting invited to things because people didn't think that I would still be into that. But it's not necessarily me feeling a way about not being invited. It's just the fact that they never asked and kind of just assumed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a continuous challenge for my friendships right now.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. I can see how being in different life stages that sometimes there can be assumptions that get developed. And I know that can be hurtful at times too, to not be invited, to wanting to have the invite. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm hearing here, reaching out to a friend you haven't in a while, it gets to a point where it's almost embarrassing to reach out or awkward. Yes, I hear you on that one. I know that can feel like kind of where do we start from here? Where do we go? So completely makes sense to why that would feel like a challenge. Thank you for sharing. So yeah, as we move to the next page here, just want to talk a bit about just important considerations in building friendships in adulthood. So here are three things to consider. So the first one is the mere exposure effect. And that basically means the more that we put ourselves in situations, the more we show up, the more familiar that we become. And as a result, research actually shows that it increases our likability. So I include this here for, recognizing that, let's say we go to a group setting. Let's say we go to a gym or a class. The more we show up, the more we are present, the more we can increase our interactions with people and that exposure, which can allow us to have more opportunities to make new friendships. And so that's something to keep in mind. The next one is decontextualize the friendships. So this can look like, friendships that you may have kind of starting to build, whether that be at work, whether that be, let's say you attend a dance class or you go to the gym, and really saying, okay, this person seems like someone I want to build a friendship with. To decontextualize that means, let me ask this person to go grab a tea after, or let me ask one of my colleagues to maybe go watch a movie together that we've both been talking about. Those are ways to decontextualize friendships and allow the friendship to have new room to flourish, and nurture that. And also establish kind of what is a new interest that can feel like an area you can connect on with them. The next one is overt avoidance versus covert avoidance. So overt avoidance is where we don't attend places, we don't attend social outings, we're physically not present. And so as a result, we may not meet people, it'd be hard to connect with new people. So that's overt avoidance. Now, covert avoidance is we show up, we're present physically, but we're mentally not present. So that could look like being on our phones, really disconnected from the space that we're in. And that can be something to consider when focusing on building friendships. Am I avoiding it in some kind of way? And so I want to talk about, how do we combat against this covert avoidance when it comes up? And there's a lot of things that can be factors that increase this avoidance, such as social anxiety, or perhaps any type of fear that might be coming up. But really the best way to navigate this is to introduce yourself, to really try to put yourself out there. I know this is can be stretching out of your comfort zone. So that can sound like, hey, my name's Natasha. How long have you been coming to this event? How do you like it? That's an example. Of course, feel free to use your own personality, and just being able to introduce yourself and connect on a common ground, whether that be sharing a compliment or getting to see some type of common interest. So yeah, I'm curious if there's any other ways that you like to introduce yourself, or yeah, feel free to share if there's anything that stands out to you. I know for me, if I'm ever like at a dog park, I have a dog, so that's a way to kind of connect. Um, you know, asking someone about their dog, and yeah, how even if it's in like a class setting, I do like to go to boxing, so that could be a place to say, hey. But yeah, I see a hand up here is with Kim.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I actually wanted to go a little bit back to when you spoke about the mere exposure effect. That's one thing I have witnessed at our Just Checking In experience, where people are coming, usually alone. They're meeting someone, and you definitely can see, like, sometimes people are struggling with introducing themselves. And to your point, the example of like, hey, have you ever been to a Villij event, or have you been to an event like this? We kind of do more of like a speed dating theme. So I see people introducing themselves through that way as well.
Amazing.
But just the fact that we hear over and over again that, people are really doing this for their first time. A lot of time people are coming and they're stepping out of their comfort zone. And we're hearing about all these WhatsApp groups that are being formed after the event, or people going out for coffee or to like a fitness class. So just this idea of like, really, once you decide to, like, I guess, quote unquote, maybe put yourself out there or just step out of your comfort zone, and just seeing how much of, like, especially when you do it with intention, some of the beautiful things that can blossom, like friendships. Essentially, that's how Chanel and I met, right? Like, we saw each other and we decided to like speak to each other, and it just started from there. So that mere exposure effect, I really love that. I didn't have the language for that, but thank you so much for introducing that.
Yes, my pleasure. And I'm so glad to hear that. That's something that you see the mere exposure effect just come to life in that way. Absolutely and that is something to add, like just checking in. That's a great experience to be able to have space to say, okay, let's connect with community. And oftentimes you may see people show up at different events, and then that's that mere exposure effect as well, continuing to connect. And so glad to hear that WhatsApp groups are being created and continuing that connection. So yeah, as we move along, I wanted to connect on just some practical tips when making friends as an adult. So the first one is, set the intention that developing friendships are important to you. When we set this intention, it allows us to go on the hunt to seek out opportunities where we can show up and embrace new friendships. The next one is remind yourself that making friends requires deliberate effort. So if you are feeling discouraged and you go, oh, I went to this event, I didn't connect with anyone, I hope that the mere exposure effect can be something that you can keep in mind, to know that, okay, this is part of it. It takes effort. It's okay to not feel that instant connection. The next one is practice pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. So taking steps to check in, am I practicing stepping out of my comfort zone, or am I noticing any avoidance tendencies through covert avoidance or perhaps overt avoidance? And really just building that awareness of what would showing up look like for me. The next one is express your appreciation, to let people know that you enjoy their company. So this can be, really letting the person know that you enjoyed hanging out with them or enjoyed meeting them. I know sometimes we may be on kind of questioning ourselves, like, did this person appreciate connecting? And so that can be something that is appreciated to help give that reassurance and continue a friendship and allow it to flourish. The next one is pursue a hobby in a group. This can be a great way to connect in community, allowing yourself to be in a group space, allowing yourself to, again, have that mere exposure effect where you get to meet people, and pretty soon it starts to be an ongoing familiar face, and who knows how you may decontextualize that friendship. The next one is draw upon the people you have. Are there friendships in your life that maybe you want to nurture more? Are there friendships that you want to feed into, or maybe decontextualize? Is there a certain thing that you even go to with this friend that maybe you want to try something new with them? The next one is know that you don't have to have a best friend. I know movies, media, there's so many things that can say, oh, I need to have a best friend, but I really want to normalize that it's also okay to have different friends that may serve a different connection purpose. Different friends may be really strong and we like to pursue this hobby together, or maybe I can resonate with certain topics with this group of friends and maybe I can't. It doesn't mean that the friendship is less valuable. It's just adjusting your expectations when it comes to certain friendships can also make it more enriching for you as well. The next one is don't wait for friendships to happen organically. Again, when we think that, okay, it's just going to happen naturally, we're going to just all of a sudden have this one talk, and then we're just going to be best friends for life. It does. Some people, I don't want to say that's never going to happen, but, also recognizing that the role of effort, and it's okay if it's taking a bit of effort. The next one is keep showing up, as we talk about the mere exposure effect, not to get discouraged, continue to show up, continue to put yourself out there. And lastly is to know what you value. As Dashana shared, but knowing what your values are can really help you guide to understand other people you want to partner with. So just pausing with these 10 tips, are there any one of these that stand out to you? I'm just going to check in with the chat. Number 8. Oh, okay, a clay workshop. Okay, I gotta scroll up a little bit here. Yes, so clay, I love that you went to a clay workshop. That sounds like so much fun. I've actually always wanted to try one of those, so that sounds like a great group event to join. And yes, number 7 and number 8. So knowing that you don't have to have a best friend, and not having to wait for friendships to happen organically, I see is something that's standing out here. 7, 8, and 10. Know what you value. Yes. And Chanel, 5 and 9. Pursue a hobby in a group. 9 is keep showing up. And yeah. Amazing. I'm glad all these 10 tips are relevant and they're resonating with you right now. So yeah, as we talk about knowing what we value, let's move into values. And so, values guide our decisions. It guides who we choose to partner with. So knowing what you value allows you to make choices that are right for you. So I want to share even an example of even, like, let's say trust being a value of someone. Brene Brown, she talks about trust being a marble jar. Brene Brown's a shame and vulnerability researcher. And so she talks about a marble jar example as if you were to think of a jar that has marbles in it, allowing yourself to say, okay, what are some small things that would build a whole jar full of marbles, and how trust is built incrementally. And so knowing what some of those trust building things are can also be very aligned with our values. So for example, let's say I value integrity. Maybe this friend has demonstrated that they are, perhaps they don't share something or talk poorly about someone. That could be an integrity marble that kind of goes into that marble jar and builds a trust. So highlighting that, friendships take time to build, and recognizing what would consist to build those marbles in that marble jar, and knowing your values is a good place to start. So some reflection questions is, consider the people that you've enjoyed spending time with. What do they all have in common? What qualities do you look for in a partner, in colleagues, in friends? Do you have someone that you admire? Why is that you admire them? What are some traits that you admire? So those are some reflection prompts. And I'm curious, as we kind of move to the next slide, we have some of these values on this page. So some of them are creativity, fun, peace, honesty, concern for others, integrity, justice, leadership, empathy, harmony, wisdom, simplicity, personal growth, reliability, trust, teamwork, openness, humility, calm, adventure, community, communication, cooperation, competition. I feel like I'm rapping now. Accountability, faith, gratitude, individuality, family, stability. So yeah, pausing with that, do any of these values resonate to you? And if so, which one, how would you define each value? Or how would you define that value? Oops, too far. So for example, if, personal growth, let's say you have a value for personal growth. This is something that can be like looking like, hey, for me as a therapist, if I want to value taking a course, I have a colleague that wants to take a course, that can be a way to decontextualize that friendship and take a course together, pursuing both of our values of personal growth. And so, yeah. Camille, I see you raised your hand. Creativity. Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry.
No worries.
I like the mention of simplicity, as I feel like there's this thing where people think that when you're going out with like a friend, it always has to be like this big night out, or like going for drinks or going for like this lavish dinner, whatever it is. I love the simpleness of just going for like a cute little picnic, or literally just being in each other's presence is enough for me. So yeah, simplicity for me is a big value.
Love that. And I love that you said picnic. Picnics are that's what I'm on this summer. So I love that. And absolutely, simplicity is something that can be so overlooked in terms of just hanging out. And it's also kind of even like quality time. What does that look like in simplicity ways? So yeah, I'm just checking in on the chat here. I see communication, trust, peace, accountability, simplicity, individuality. I would also add care and support as values. Chanel agreed, lately I've been doing a lot of walks in person and on the phone with friends, and I feel so much more connected. Good, I love that. And I see a hand up. Estefania.
Hey, so it's really weird for me when it comes to values, and I've been thinking about this for a while, just because I'm a very simple person, also not very girly, but I have to admit, because of some of my friends who have those values lately, actually more like in 2023, like my goal was to like be more selfish and take care of myself. So I actually started like getting my nails done, getting my eyelashes done, which is very different. Everybody's like, who are you? But so it's like, it's really weird to be, so it's weird for me to say that I'm trying to figure out where I draw the line in values, because at the same time, I like people who are different from me, because I can learn from them. So it's like I'm trying to find that balance where it's like, yeah, this person's different, but then I still want to spend time with them, versus this person is different, a little too different, and I don't want to spend time with them. So like all of these, everything on the list sounds really great, But the only one that really resonates me the most is family, just because I hang out with my family a lot. And I did hang out with people who were like continuously question me about it. They were like, why are you hanging out with my family? And I just decided that that's not one of my boundaries. I'm like, if you have to ask that question, then that's a problem. That's a problem for me, because it's like, why should you question somebody for spending time with their family and friends? You know? So that's the only one that I've decided is like a value that I want in the people around me. But like, yeah, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out the rest, just because at the end of the day, there are people who are different, that have that very different from me in my life. That I also appreciate what they broaden my views of things. Yeah. I hope it made sense. I was gonna write on the chat. I'm like, I don't know how to write this.
No, that does make sense. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. So I'm hearing family is an important value. And I'm hearing also, it sounds like openness. It sounds like I'm hearing like there's a desire to want to connect with people that are like have differences, that, it sounds like openness to different perspectives is what I'm hearing from you. Is that fair to say that openness would feel like a value?
Yeah, that sounds good, actually. I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
There we go. Yes. Good. And, our values can be something that are ever evolving as we kind of go through experiences, as we reflect on them. We may say, why did that upset me so much? Why did that? And as you mentioned with that comment that was made about family, it sounds like that level of frustration, or that what's going on? Why is this even a question for this person? That highlights, that's a value for me. That's family is a value for me. So yeah, our values is something that we can constantly tune into, and they are evolving. And so, yeah, Deshauna, I see you shared concern for others, openness, reliability, creativity, adventure, community, all great values. Thank you so much for sharing. And so, yeah, this can be something to reflect on further. If any of these questions stood out to you around, who are people you've enjoyed spending with? What do they have time with? Feel free to take a picture of this or write this down. They're all kind of ways to help kind of fine tune what are some of your values. So, yeah, the next one I want to discuss is affirmations for embracing friendships in adulthood. And affirmations can be a great way to help encourage you during this time. I know it can feel uncomfortable to make friendships. It can feel like an emotional risk to make new friendships and connections. So here's some just helpful ways to ground yourself. The first one is, I am worthy of meaningful connections with others. I am open to new friendships and experiences. I am grateful for the friendships that I have and excited to make new ones. I embrace vulnerability in my friendships and allow myself to be seen. I am loving, kind, and accepting towards myself and others. I am reminding myself that discomfort of opening up to new connections does not mean that I am not safe. I am making use of healthy boundaries as I navigate new connections. So I want to just check in here. Is there any of these affirmations that stand out to you right now? Or one that you want to be extra mindful of? And I know they're not numbered off, but feel free. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We got 7 here. So if you want to add just the numbers, that totally works. Second last one. Okay, yes. I'm reminding myself that the discomfort of opening up to new connections does not mean that it's not safe. Yeah, and that one, I want to just distinguish the difference between that. What is discomfort? What is true not feeling like unsafe or a danger? And sometimes, as we are vulnerable, it is an emotional risk that we're opening ourselves up to. So it's okay to notice that discomfort, but just reminding yourself that it does not mean that you are in danger. It's okay to say, this is of course uncomfortable. So yeah, feel free to write any of these down. And so yeah, moving towards just our next page around what are some practical steps to put some of these topics into action. And so we have 5 journal prompts. And so the first one would be, what are some qualities you look for in a friend? How can you cultivate those qualities in yourself? So this question really allows you to say, okay, what am I looking for in someone else? Am I also holding myself accountable to say, I'm also showing up and being the friend that invites that type of friendship? So if I value empathy, am I meeting people with empathy as well? Am I meeting people with kindness? And that can also be what's called the law of magnetism. Sometimes we attract what we put out. And the next one is reflect on a meaningful friendship from your past. What made that friendship special? How can you incorporate these elements into new friendships? So, this is another way to kind of help establish some of your values, even your boundaries. We may learn from past friendships what was so special about that. Maybe there was a respect for personal space, maybe for personal time, maybe there was respect for checking in. The next one is, what are some ways you can push yourself out of your comfort zone to meet new people? Brainstorm some specific activities or events. So yeah, I'm curious with this one, as we kind of talk about a brainstorm, where would be a place where you would want to meet someone? Are there any events coming up? Feel free to drop it in the chat. Maybe there's some shared interest there. I'm glad you're loving the journal prompts. Yes. And yeah, I know, the next one would be, what are some common barriers you face when trying to make new friends? How can you overcome these barriers? This can be a helpful one to reflect on. Are there any wounds that may be coming up in relationships, or any type of insecurities, any type of covert avoidance that may be coming up? And the last one are, what are some affirmations or mantras that you can use to build confidence when approaching new social situations? So this is just a helpful way to help say, okay, what are the next steps? How can I really practically use some affirmations to help support me in my goals? So yeah, the next slide here is just more so resources. So really getting to know where can you connect? If you are noticing feelings of like wounds come up in friendships, you're feeling disconnected or scared to connect, want you to know that it's okay to notice that. And, you can always talk about some of these experiences in therapy. So Psychology Today and Black Therapist List are great resources to connect. Also wanted to share some connection resources. So Bumble BFF, I've heard some really great success stories there on, meeting people, creating almost like a dating profile, but for friends. The next one is meetup.com. That's a place where you can connect based on similar interests. So let's say you have a love for photography or a love for reading. There's a lot of places where you can post on that platform and see if there's people that have shared interests and meet up with them. It also gives you the opportunity to create your own meetup group. So if you wanted to host one, that's an option as well. And of course, the Just Checking In experience, as Kim was talking about, is a great place to connect and go through some of those questions that can really help connection and kind of like a speed dating for friendships. And lastly, I want to recommend a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. So this was created by Dale Carnegie. And so this is really about how to interact in new connections, new friendships, really ways to help embrace connection. So it has a lot of tips there, especially if you're notice yourself needing some structure or feeling some social anxiety, that can be a great resource. So yeah, I want to check in with the chat. And so awesome. I see some great events here. Just checking in. We got Trap Soul Yoga. Amazing. A body positivity paint night. Love that. Oh, you do have to send the artist a picture. It does not have to be nude, but basically uses the picture to create a paint by number for you. Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Yes, if you could please add the website or the social, that'd be great. Thank you. So yeah, this is kind of brings us to the end of the art of navigating friendship. So thank you so much for being here and for showing up. And so wanted to just open the floor for any questions you may have.
Natasha, I have one.
Yes.
Okay, so I kind of did what you guys said already. So I met a friend through like a nature thing, like camping and stuff, and we connected on that. And then we did like something today actually, and it was cool, but she had something to say to me and she said it in front of like another person. And I'm just wondering how you could navigate like, when do you know whether it's good to like continue something, or when you're like, or when do you know when to end it? Like, I'm kind of wondering, like, because it's so new and you like, I know there's red flags, just like how you're dating somebody and there's red flags, there's red flags in friendship too. So I'm just wondering, like, how do I navigate something like that where I'm entering a new friendship, but I'm noticing that, you know, I'm already kind of being disrespected, and I just want to know how to navigate that.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. It sounds like, so what I'm hearing is they had mentioned something in front of someone else. And that made you feel disrespected. And so wanting to know what to do when you start to see some of those red flags in friendships. And so a big part of that can be, you know, I think it's really important that you're noticing, like, what are your red flags? What came up for you when they did bring something up? You know, of course, with not knowing too much of the details, it sounds like that brought up feelings for you. And so being able to tune into that and noticing that as, okay, maybe this is informing me of a boundary of mine. Is it a boundary of mine to say, I don't want certain things to be shared in front of other people? And so to really get to know, if this is a friendship that is healthy, you know, that could be, do we have strong communication? Is there respect when I share my opinions? Is there emotional safety that I'm going to be heard? And so really being able to, I know that can sometimes say, can be communicating a boundary. So boundaries are two parts. We verbalize them and then the action component. So in this case, a verbalization of the boundary can sound like, you know, hey, I noticed when, you know, you brought that up, you know, I felt a bit uncomfortable. You know, I really appreciate confidentiality. And that's where it comes down to knowing your values. Of, I really appreciate, you know, what I share with you stays between us. You know, do you mind not sharing that part of what I shared to anyone else? Or, you know, maybe this is a topic that we could just have you and I, and seeing how they respond. That's a way to express that need. If you're met with, you know, defensiveness, or you're met with, you know, belittling of how that made you feel, then that can also be insight and information for you to say, okay, you know, is this a red flag? This could be a red flag in the friendship. And do I want to continue this, or how do I want to move forward from here? So yeah, I hope that helps. I wanted to check in if
yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, good. My pleasure. And just checking in the chat here. Yes, great question for sure. Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm glad that that was helpful. And I'm glad you brought that up, Elise. That's really, I can see how that's so important when assessing new friends. Um, so yeah, I see a hand up here, Camille.
Hi. Okay, so my question is, sometimes if I have a friend who's kind of sharing something that's pretty vulnerable to them, I sometimes catch myself responding by mentioning something that happened similar to me, but I'm trying to create a boundary where I don't do that because I feel like I'm taking away from what they're sharing. With that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I think just you being aware of that is so important. And I know sometimes really being able to say, okay, what does this friend need from me right now? And I know sometimes sharing stories, sharing how we relate can be a way to help make the person feel less alone in their experience and know that you also relate with that. And that can also bring this sense of shared humanity. So there is a lot of value in sharing stories. But I know timing of like, okay, is this helpful right now, or is this not helpful? Do they need me to hold space for them? And so sometimes asking, what do I want to really support you right now. What do you feel like is best? Do you need someone to just listen to you right now? Do you need someone, are you looking to brainstorm advice? Are you looking, and are you open if I share something with you, if I share my own personal experience? Can be a helpful way to assess, what might be most helpful in that situation. So, yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And yeah, I'm just checking in on the chat. That's something I've learned. I'm still trying to implement. Ask people what they would like from you. Thanks for sharing, Kim. Yes, I know it is a learning process to say, okay, what's the right time to share? What might this person need? But absolutely. Chanel, I see your hands up.
Yes, I was about to hop on the mic, but I was like, let me be respectful and raise my hand. So it wasn't really a question, it was a comment. So I had a friendship that I've had it was probably like over a decade. And I found that it was really starting to be very toxic, very self-centered, very like draining. And over some time, we kind of like stopped communicating as much. And I took it as, okay, the friendship is dead. And then they came back around, like profusely apologizing because they were an awful friend. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. And I realized in this workshop that I made the right decision because a lot of the red flags were the red flags that I was enduring for over 10 years. I felt strange and I almost felt like the person wanted, like even the fact that I was doing stuff like the Villij made them uncomfortable. So I'm like, this friendship is not for me. So like, thank you so much for crafting this beautiful workshop because it really helped me. Like you still feel guilt, right? You feel guilt because of the friendship breakup. This was supposed to be your best friend. But like, wow, this was exactly what I needed to kind of get over that little piece of guilt that I had left.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing, Chanel. I know, and I think that's so important to normalize. It's just the guilt that can come up after ending certain friendships. That, sometimes we may doubt ourselves of like, was that the red flag? Were they there as time passes? And so I'm glad that you were able to really reflect on, what are some of those red flags? What are some of like feeling drained, leaving them, not feeling like this person is celebrating your accomplishments or that they're uncomfortable with your accomplishments? Absolutely some red flags there. So I'm glad that it was able to validate that. Yes, and I see a hand up from Estefania.
So my question is, how important is it to kind of like, if it backtracks from what Chanel just said, actually. Like, if you notice that like a friendship is pretty much done, like you see that they no longer fit into who you are in the present moment, how important is it to actually have a conversation? Just because I am a true believer in communication. I communicate a little too much, actually. I feel like I'm actually learning to take a step back. But at the same time, I'm also learning that, like an example with this friend of mine, I feel like I've always been a giver, like helping them, going above and beyond to help them. But I also just noticed that they're never helping themselves. And I feel like a lot of the times when they reach out to me, it's really like I get this elaborate story about how things are not going well, and which is always how it happens. And then I'm like, oh my God, let me give you this, let me do this for you. But then I notice that they're not also doing anything with the help that I'm giving them. So I'm kind of stuck in this place where I feel like I need to have a conversation, but at the same time, I genuinely don't want to have the conversation because I know it's a lost cause. Because I think it's like, at the end of the day, some people will do what they want to do. And I don't know, it's kind of like going back to like thinking about, at the end of the day, people are who they are. If they show you who they are, that's who they are. So what's the point in having a conversation? Because it's been years of this now. Like, how can I even trust that if you have a conversation, I know they're going to say the right things because they're great at telling stories. So, do you know what I mean? Like, how important it's because I also want to be respectful, because I believe that I want to do my best in treating people the same way that I want to be treated. But in this whole journey of setting boundaries, being more selfish, I shouldn't call it selfishness, but that's what I'm calling it. You know, focusing on me more. How do I find that balance? Like, so how important is it to have that conversation?
Yes. Thank you so much for this question. I think this is such an important question. And I hear this come up a lot too, is, you know, so it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is really getting to know what this friendship is. There's a lot of emotional dumping at times, like expressing what's going on in their life. You're kind of in a dynamic where you notice yourself to sometimes give advice, and realizing that you're feeling depleted in that friendship, feeling like it is not going anywhere. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And it's not just like advice, it's like, it's everything. It's my time.
Yeah.
It's financially, it's like all of that.
Yes.
Like,
and
my
so,
belief is just that like, I feel like if you help someone, if somebody offers a hand, it's okay to take the hand, but it's not okay to take the arm. And then if somebody's giving you something to help you level up, because you said you want to level up, you should put your energy into that. So why should I invest in somebody when they're not investing themselves? Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. It sounds like as we talk about boundaries, and I noticed you use the word selfish, and I always want to reiterate, boundaries are not selfish. They are helping you create a functioning relationship, because, you know, oftentimes that's where resentment grows. When we don't have boundaries, we start to build resentment. So what you're doing is actually the opposite of selfish. It's supporting a healthy, functioning, and effective relationship. And so as I'm hearing you share about, you know, the areas that you're noticing yourself to feel depleted in, so financially, emotionally, it sounds like recognizing where you're pouring from, and not feeling like it sounds like not a reciprocal relationship where you're allowing there to be a pour back and a nurturing aspect of the relationship. So, you know, recognizing what your capacity is. So for example, if this friend likes to call and talk about their experiences, you know, that can be, when we talk about boundaries, that can be something that's verbalized, like recognizing what your capacity is. So maybe that can sound like, hey, you know, I've noticed this. And that's where that healthy accountability comes in too with healthy friendships, is I've noticed we've been talking about this topic a lot. You know, I notice I'm giving you advice on this, really checking in what your capacity is of, I'm noticing I'm kind of feeling a bit exhausted, and I want to support, or maybe it's I want to take a step back, and maybe I can't really support you in that way. That's you being honest in the friendship and having clarity. So sometimes friendships may have to have a conversation around that of boundaries, really communicating what those look like for you. And if those boundaries are respected, what might that look like? Or perhaps if they're not respected, then that can also inform you of perhaps the friendship is not a healthy friendship. And so, yeah, I hope that helps. Want to check in if there's anything else coming up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually have another question. Sorry, came up as you were talking, and based on what Camille mentioned about getting married and not being invited. So now I have a question regarding. So I feel that sometimes if I know that my friends are financially struggling, I don't invite them to stuff. I don't invite them to stuff, but I'm like, well, I don't think they're in that place to go out and do these things. They cannot, they should not be spending this money. So I just don't invite them.
I see.
Is that bad? Is that...
Thank you. Well, first, thank you for sharing. And I'm glad that it was able to, like what Camille shared was resonated and allowed you to reflect and say, is that hurting someone? Is that like, how is that impacting them? And I think it sounds like there's a level, I'm hearing from you, there's a level of mindfulness of like, I want to be mindful of the person's financial situation. Perhaps I don't want them to feel like they pressured. And so, yeah, I think you just stating that, it sounds like that's something even that could be used in communication of, hey, I would really want, like, I'm inviting you to this, to send the invite. But I totally understand that this is there's a cost to it. If you can't make it, no pressure, just know you got the invite. Something like that can also help add that inclusion. But yeah, how does that sound for you? Does that feel like it resonates?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's definitely not something I thought about. In my head, I was just like, no, I'd rather not put the pressure, because then I feel guilty, and yeah.
Yeah. And you can also ask, are these events that you want to be invited to? You can always ask if it does give them pressure when you ask. So it sounds like there's always room for that clarity in that conversation. Yeah. So I see a hand up for Elise.
Ooh, I just wanted to comment because I thought just being on the other side of Estefania is her response is like, I've been the friend that couldn't afford certain things. And I think what also was really helpful was like time, like giving enough time. Like sometimes like an event would come up and it's so short notice that it's not even that I couldn't find the money, it's just that it was too short of a time to gather things together. So even giving enough time, because I found that eventually what would happen was my friend would do the same thing and it would feel very elitist. Like certain things would be like the friends with money, and then the friends with no money kind of felt like you just felt excluded. So I'm just a suggestion, like I'm not trying to say anything, I'm not trying to be judgmental, but I was just saying like for me, what was helpful is like, hey, we're going to do this in 3 months. And it's going to be $150. You have enough ample time to kind of gather those funds, because then you feel kind of funny. Like when you look online and you see all these friends together and you're like, I could have come if you like given me a heads up. It's just a suggestion. I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying that I've been on the other side of that. So it's just, that's kind of what I thought of when I was in that situation.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. And I like hearing the question. I wanted to open up the floor if that's been in this anyone's situation and what feels supportive, because absolutely. It sounds like that's a really great suggestion around what could have been supportive for you in those times of having that notice to collect those funds, if that's something that you were interested in joining. So thank you for sharing. I see a hand up for Chanel.
Yeah, I just want to chime in. I've been on both ends. Like I was a student and parent, so like broke. And it was very difficult to do some of the things that my friends were doing. But at the same time, we also have to remember that a lot of our friends have different priorities right now. Like for myself, all my money is tied up in making sure that my daughter can go to the States this summer for basketball. So when my friends like offer me to go for a weekend, I don't know, to the States or a trip to Europe, that's not something that's accessible to me right now. But I can't do that, but I could go for a walk, but I could go for a picnic, or, you know what I mean? So it's like, even if I do have the means, it might not be one of my priorities at the time.
Yes. Good. I appreciate you sharing that, because absolutely that's something of, if I can't connect with this person in this way, there's other ways of connecting. And that's why, kind of going back to that quote on connection, is true connection is really being able to feel seen, feeling heard, feeling valued. As we approach friendships, asking yourself, how can I support this person in feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling valued? Also, what are some things that make me feel seen, heard, and valued? And that can help be a guide of how you navigate friendships. What are the things that you want to encourage? So, yeah, I want to just, I know, being mindful of time, just checking in if there's any other questions coming up right now. I'm just checking in on the chat here. Who would be interested in a picnic, Villij edition? That sounds great. Yeah, thank you so much for joining and for being here and sharing your evening and just participating in this conversation. I think it's so important to just normalize and check in about what's been coming up in friendships. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
And just a reminder to everyone that you deserve to be well. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a wonderful night.